audience in 6 easy steps. Let me say that again. The 7-minute hero, how to captivate your audience in 6 easy steps. Please help me welcome storyteller, speaking coach, podcast host, and second place winner of the 2022 World Championship of Public Speaking, distinguished Toastmaster, Alexandre Matt.
Wow, merci. Thank you so much for the introduction. Was that a little long? Maybe next time I need to make it shorter. Wow. It sounds so good when you read it, Carole. Merci beaucoup. Now, I am very pleased to be with you here. I hope that Shahrukh is doing okay. If you have any news for me, I'll get that later from you. And I'll mention Shahrukh later on during this workshop because he did help me understand something about my own speech that I had not even realized. So we'll see about that later on. Now, let me share the screen and let's see if it works. This is the Mentimeter application where you can take your smartphone with the camera application, scan the QR code, and then play along with your smartphone. You can ask questions, you can vote, you can react, and you can see on screen as I'm sharing as well. Sometimes I won't even be sharing on the screen, but you will still see it on the on your smartphone. Did I say smartphone? Smartphone. What is the right word? Now, I think I can also click here and copy the link. Is it working? And I'm going to put it right into the chat as well. No, I won't. It's not working. If someone is really technical and wants to put the voting link into the chat, that would be cool. If not, it's okay. I'm also going to look at the chat in Zoom in case there are questions there as well. And someone will help me with the questions later on if I'm overwhelmed by them. But I do want to start with one question. Before we get to the content of this workshop, this is the question. And we'll see if the application is working correctly. The question is, do you want to create your best speech ever? Now, while you vote on that, I'm going to mention how I managed to create what I think are my best speeches ever in 2022. See, when I started in 2009, I became a member in 2007 of Toastmasters, and I competed in 2009 for the first time. And at first, I didn't want to compete, but my mentor, Sue, convinced me that it was a great way to improve my communication skills, maybe even better than just doing it in your own home club. I'm curious, has anybody competed and seen that happen? When you compete and you realize that, oh, working on one speech for longer than just a few days, that can really help you understand how you can make a great speech. But how can you go from making a good speech to a great speech to the best speech ever in your life? Well, think about those great speeches that have won the World Championship. And why don't we put it in the chat? What are some elements in 1 or 2 words that make a speech absolutely great, make a winning speech? Why do you want to watch a speech over and over again? I'm thinking of the great speeches like Mark Brown's 2009 A Sink Full of Green Tomatoes. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. It's my favorite of all time. Vincent says, a humor, a story. Oh, Marilee focused on the audience. I love that. Melody says, thought-provoking. Paul mentions funny and spectacular. These are all great answers, and I think all of these championship speeches managed to do that. I'm going to focus on Vincent's second word, story. Most of the speeches that you hear in the International Speech Contest will include a story or multiple stories. But how do you make a fantastic story? What is a great story that makes you sit on the edge of your seat and you just want to know what's going on? Well, think about the emotions that you're feeling. If you're physically on the edge of your seat, looking at the speaker and wondering what's going on, it's because you're sort of invested in that story, right? And why? I would say it's because of the emotional roller coaster that the speaker makes you live through. Was that an okay sentence? The emotional roller coaster that the speaker invites you on. You're not supposed to end a sentence with a preposition, right? But I think you understood anyway. My mother is a teacher, and sometimes she would say, a preposition is something that you should not end your sentences with. Another answer from Donna, a universal message. Yeah, we'll get to that as well. And thanks, Cheyenne, for sharing a sink full of green tomatoes. Click on that and press play later on. Fantastic writing. Now, if I take that example from 2009, I remember listening it to the first time. It was live when Mark came to our district. And I just remember going, oh my God, up and down and crying and laughing from one moment to the next. And what makes a great story? It's when the main character, meaning normally the speaker, goes through those emotions as well throughout their own story, through the retelling of their story. And speaking of Mark Hunter, he was my coach starting in 2012 and again in 2022. And after we finished working together in 2012, he introduced me to one idea, but I didn't really research it until later. So while at first in 2009, I competed and I was a little bit like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's see how it works, getting feedback from different sources. After 2012, and Mark was my coach, Mark introduced me to the idea of the hero's journey. Now, let me just write this here. You saw it on my slide, and there it is. And I'll give you a link, but you will see. I'll also put it on screen there. First, let's look at this answer. You want to create your best speech ever? Most respondents say yes. One says no. That's okay. So what I want to share with you is the hero's journey. Without going into detail of what that is, I can tell you that I started researching it a few years ago when I launched my storytelling career. And I wanted to know more about different storytelling models. Now, Joseph Campbell in the 1940s analyzed hundreds of myths, legends, stories going back a long time, and discovered, and he's not the only one to have done this, but he's the most widely recognized, discovered that all of these stories share a similar journey of the main character or the hero. I've got the book at home, and it's about 500 pages long. So instead of giving you the 500 pages, let's think about the second name that you see on that slide, Vogler, Christopher Vogler, who was a screenwriter for Disney, for the movie company. And he took that 500-page book and condensed it to 5 pages so that the Disney screenwriters could use that model for their future films. and it is astoundingly efficient. Let's see if I can share with you just one. Oh, you know what? I've got some resources for you. I'll share it all together at once because I don't want you to click on too many links. But what I want to do is I want to mention that when I started developing or researching the hero's journey, I wanted to apply it to my 7-minute speeches, but I found it was a little complicated. See, if I go back to, oh, that's the wrong screen. If I go back to this, 12 different steps, including things like crossing the first threshold, approaching the innermost cave, the road back, the resurrection, the return with the elixir. This is great for novels, movies, longer stories. But if you've got 7 minutes, it's really difficult. And in fact, the most that I've managed to include in one speech is 10. But most of the time, you don't need that many. So I'm going to condense it further for you. What if you had one model that helped you create your next speech almost instantly in just a few minutes? Do you think that would be good? If I offer you something that helps you create your speech in just 5 minutes. So here's the outline, condensed. Before I show you that outline, just by the way, you've got this. It's possible for you to ask questions. So when we have time for questions later, we'll go here, okay? But let me show you how I condense those 12 steps into 6. I'll share those relatively quickly. And if you've got questions, I'll take them right away. But then I'll give you example of how I applied this to my own final speech last year. So check it out. You've got only 6 steps. And just in case I wasn't clear earlier, when I mentioned the hero, in this case, it is the main character, the person to whom the story happens, or the person who goes on this journey. And usually, in the context of the speech contest, it's going to be the person on stage, sharing their own personal story, right? It's very rare that you'll see these international speech contests where the main character is not themselves on stage. That seems to work, and it's also, I think the reason it works is because it feels more real, more true. So here are the steps. First one, the everyday life. Everything seems normal. The hero is seen in their everyday life. We could, oh, you know what? To help understand, I think I'm going to take an example of a movie you might have seen called Titanic. Popular enough that most people have seen it. And if you haven't seen it, you probably know what Titanic is about. So if I take the hero, in this case, I'll take the Rose. Rose is sharing her story during the movie, right? During the movie. And then we go back in time to the boat. So the everyday life, we just see Rose with her, we discover that she is engaged to this guy that we'll learn later is not very nice. So that there's the everyday life. At the same time, in parallel, we have Jack's everyday life, but let's put him aside for now. The call to adventure. This is the initiating incident of your story. If you come back to Rose and Jack, they both go on this boat that is supposed to be fantastic, the best experience of your life. Now, most people who went to the movies to see this movie, they knew what was going to happen. The characters did not. So this is a call to adventure. And when Rose first meets Jack, you could say that this is the secondary adventure. It's not just going on the boat, but it's meeting this person that is from a different class. Remember, they're on the top and he's on the bottom. And so then they live this adventure. And this is the core of the story, the adventure and the difficulties. The hero lives the adventure faces difficulties and makes friends and enemies. In a certain sense, Jack is a mentor to Rose during that experience. And there's multiple adventures that happen. I mentioned the first class on the top and then the second and third class on the bottom, right? So there are all these battles going on and some difficulties. And when you see the word enemies, we see the enemy, right? The fiancé, I forget his name, but we find out that he's really evil, right? It turns out that spoiler alert, if you don't want to know, block your ears now. When the ship is going down, he sees a crying child, not his, picks up the child and says, "I need to go on the boat on this lifeboat to save my child." Ugh. So you see that this is an enemy, and he's very mean against Jack and Rose as well. So you've got these friends and enemies. So this is all within the context of an epic movie, but you'll see that it can be applied to a 7-minute speech. The great challenge is the next step. The hero faces the greatest challenge yet and surmounts seemingly impossible odds. The ship goes down. Rose and Jack are trying to stay together, and if you remember, they're in the water at the end, and they're trying to save each other, but it's impossible for both of them to stay on the it's a door or something, right? A big piece of wood floating. So again, if you don't want to know, close your ears now. Jack lets go, or Rose lets him go, because he sacrificed himself for her. So they were close to ultimate demise, but she was able to surmount those odds because of her ally, Jack. Now, let's go to the most important part of a great story. The most important part of the story is the next one. Without this, it's not a great story, and you won't be able to convince anyone of whatever your message, your universal message is. The transformation. This is when the hero experiences the benefits of going through that great challenge. So in our example here, at the end, you may recall that when she is saved or rescued, Rose is asked her name, and she doesn't use her real name. She changes her name to whatever Jack's last name was, right? So this is where there's a transformation, where she wants to honor his memory rather than going back to the life that she had before. She's completely transformed. Now, when your hero is transformed, it means that's the opportunity to let your audience know, and in this case, the audience who was watching the movie, what is she going to share with the normal world? And this is what we can call sharing the wisdom. The hero shares wisdom to improve the world. Now, in her case, the wisdom that she shares at the end is when she's back as the old lady, right? And sharing her lessons with the people who were listening to her story. So she's got deeper lessons about being friends with people that are not of the same kind. So there's different wisdom that she can share with the regular world. All right, let me stop this sharing and just do a check-in. I want to see the faces here. And by the way, I see 50 of us are online, but I only see about 13 on cameras that are on. Please don't hesitate. Don't be shy. You can turn on your camera, because I do look at you to see if you're still with me and to see if there are any questions, or if, let me ask the question clearly. Up to now, is it clear? Let's say yes or no. Okay, great. All right. So now, how can I take these 6 steps of the hero's journey and apply it to a 7-minute speech? Now that we have the background of what is the hero's journey, I'm going to give you the example from my own final speech from 2022 that was instrumental in getting this little thing here. Yeah, sometimes I carry it with me. So here it is. Oh, I should ask first. Can you put it in the chat a yes or a no or Y or N? Have you seen my 2022 final speech? Just a Y or N or nod. It might be half and half. Okay. So if you've seen it, well, maybe you'll remember it. And then when you see the example, you'll be able to recall. Sorry, Paul says gâteau mi-cuit. Oui, presque. Le gâteau pas cuit. The no-bake cake. C'est ça, merci, Paul. Yeah, so I share the story of a cake. It seems simple, right? There's a story about a family recipe, but it's much deeper than that. It's about family traditions. So let me show you. So if you have seen my speech, I think you'll appreciate this. And if you have not, I hope you'll still appreciate it because I've got my story outlined right there. And when I'm done sharing this example, it's then going to be your turn. Here's how I applied the hero's journey to my missing ingredient, speech and story. I'll go fairly quickly. The everyday life, I just explained, this is a traditional family reunion, and I present the characters. My grandmother, my Aunt Christiane, and the traditional no-bake cake that grandmama made. The call to adventure is when Christiane suddenly passes away and the family struggles to stay together. So that's the adventure. So what do I do to start the adventure? The adventure and difficulties is when I try to make the cake. I try to apply and hold one part of the tradition. And here's where I'm going to mention Charouk. Because my uncle Pierre, he's there to critique my cake. And year after year, I try to make it, and finally I succeed. Now, where Charouk comes in is when he analyzed the speech publicly in, I think, last January. He said, Pierre is the antagonist, the enemy. I thought, my uncle is my enemy? Really? Oh, yeah. Yeah, he is. So while we were never fighting, we were not at each other's throats, and he never was mean with me. He's the one who helps me in my struggle. So in a certain sense, he's a mentor, but if you analyze it a different way, he can be like the antagonist, the enemy. So the enemy does not need to be the devil, does not need to be a very mean or evil person like in Titanic or superhero movies. Sometimes it's a friend who helps you discover something about you or about what you're doing and who pushes you somehow. In my semi-final speech, it's an aunt from the other side of the family. But she's not mean. We're just, we don't agree on some things. So that's when there's the adventure and difficulties. Now, the great challenge, this is the deepest part of the movie, sorry, of the speech. Maybe I should make it into a movie. Is when my grandmama also leaves us. And then I struggle. Will the family crumble? What's going to happen? And I also make a comparison, and through the speech, I weave in the movie or the musical Fiddler on the Roof. And this is where I make the comparison with not just our little family's traditions, but the traditions of a whole people. And I realize, and this is the most important part, when there is the transformation, will my family crumble? No, because my cousins are there to hold the torch. And the family remains intact because of our family traditions. That's the transformation, when I realize, even though things change, I can help keep this together because of our traditions. So what is the very last step? It's when I share the wisdom. Now, when it's in a movie or a elixir, so coming back to the normal world and sharing the wisdom with their world. But in this case, because we are sharing a story with an audience, this is where we can share the wisdom with them. And this is when I encourage people to have an invitation rather than telling them what to do, after they've realized that you have transformed, you as the main character of your story, you have learned something. Well, this is what everybody can learn as well. So this is where I invite everyone to keep traditions alive. With my last sentence, traditions hold us together. So that's how I was able to incorporate and apply the hero's journey to that speech. And I did that with my semifinal speech. And now I continue to do it with not only my speeches, but when I help others. Here's a little, I do want to mention something else though. This is not meant to be a model that is set in stone. These are different steps and parts of a story that help you have that effect of a roller coaster of emotions for your audience. So while it's possible to give it in a linear fashion this way, there are also different ways of doing it. In fact, when Joseph Campbell was writing his seminal work, I don't think his initial intention was to create a model so that other people could write stories and movies. It was a way to analyze existing movies and stories and future stories as well. So that's how I am also able to apply it when I am coaching people, speakers. I can ask myself and ask the speaker, well, sometimes you'll think something seems to be missing in this story. I'm not really into it. So okay, let's analyze it. Let's see if you got all these steps. And if there's one thing missing, it's like this might be it. You might be. So then I ask questions to figure out, well, what did you learn from this experience, or who was there to help you understand what you needed to do? So those are some of the questions that I ask as a coach. Let me see if there are any questions somewhere. Are there questions in the chat before we go to the next section? I'll see here.
No, there are not.
Okay, no. I had one question. What are the 6 steps 26 minutes ago? I think I've answered that question. Well, I'll write that it's done. All right. I asked you if you would like to have a model to follow to create your next best speech. So now what I want to do is give you a few minutes to create the outline of your next story. In other words, it is your turn. Voila. I'm going to give you approximately 5 minutes. Oh, let me share something in the chat so that you can actually right now download those 6 steps. So you don't need to depend on me sharing it. You can actually click it right there. There's a PDF that you can click to have it at the tip of your fingertips. Because I'm going to just put a 5-minute timer, and then I will invite someone or multiple people to share what they have created. These 5 minutes are also a good time if you've got any questions. You'll be able to turn on your microphone and ask them. If you need more, if you've got some questions relating to how to use the steps, for example. All right, so I'll stop the share so I can see you write frantically. And then we'll get back to you, okay? So let's put 5 minutes on the timer. I'm going to start the timer right now. And I will let you write your next story. And while some are already thinking about it, I'm going to offer you some questions if you're looking for ideas of your next story. One thing that I could ask is, I do this with high school students when I teach them. What is the most, or one of the most memorable moments of your life? If you think about a very memorable experience, that would be something that could be shared as a story. Another question might be, what is the best piece of wisdom that you have learned? And how, and when, and who taught you that? By the way, I'm just asking for an outline. You saw my example of just 2 or 3 sentences per step. Here's another prompting question. What did your parents used to tell you when you were a child? Something so important and impactful that you still remember today. If you're still looking for ideas, you could also take a speech that you like, a story that you have already told in your Toastmasters club or elsewhere, and just rewrite it using those 6 steps. About 2 minutes to go. And if you're not done in 2 minutes, don't worry. Of course, you can continue later on. But we should have put on some music. From the Titanic, maybe.
Right. Celine Dion's.
Oui, c'est ça.
Yeah.
How does it go again?
The name of the song now.
Maybe it's best not to remember because it gets stuck in your head for many days.
Right.
Don't remember.
Oh, my heart will go on. That's right.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Cheyenne.
I'm flying, Jack. Okay, just a few more seconds. Okay, thanks, Melody. I think it's appropriate that the person who started the melody is Melody. Okay, now let me ask in the chat, were you able to do something that starts to look like a good first draft, or at least an outline of your next speech? Yes or no, Y or N? If you were able to have something that will be your next speech. Yeah, great, great, great. Now here's the next question. Would you like to share? You can write in the chat, I want to share, or lift up your hand in Zoom. Je vois Michael. Michael, and then Ali. Okay, let's start with Michael. I saw your hand first. Michael, can you turn on your...
Can you hear me?
Oui, yes. So let's go through each of the 6 steps in order.
Well, I don't know if I have the 6 steps exactly because I couldn't quite see the model, but it's more or less the flow. So the story starts with my niece visiting from Ontario to visit here in BC. And I played her and her future husband-to-be a song that I'd written. This is in the context of cocktails in the evening. I'd had a couple of glasses of wine. When I was done, she said, would you play at my wedding, which is coming up in August? And I said, sure, no problem. Then overnight, I thought, there are going to be 150 people there. I started to panic, really seriously. I'm going to make a fool of myself, because I don't sing in public at that point. I sing to the dog, you know. So the next day I said, Cheryl, are you sure that you want me to do this? And she said, Uncle Mike, are you saying you don't want to sing at my wedding? So I was trapped.
Mm-hmm.
So I got busy. I had to get busy and get into business of training. So I have a coach, music coach, and he had me singing to the forest and singing to the ocean. And then showtime came, the day in Burlington at the wedding, and it all went fine. I was just like flipping a switch because I'd practiced so much. And then I saw my brother-in-law sitting there in the audience looking like, where the hell did this come from? You know, how did this happen? And so that was quite satisfying. And I got a lot of good feedback from her friends. And the lesson, the takeaway has to be having the courage to be the best you can be rather than hiding.
Be the best you can be.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So let me just go really quickly in one step at a time. The everyday life, when you show who everybody is with the drinks, and the call to adventure, can you sing at my wedding? Now, here's something really interesting that you didn't see in my PDF, but it's something that can really enhance this storytelling model, is the refusal of the call, a hesitation to go on the adventure. Are you, oh my God, are you sure? I don't want to do this. So when you've got that hesitation, every movie has this. The adventure, you get busy with training, you get the coach, which is the mentor and ally, right? And the great challenge is the day of the wedding. Now, it would be really cool. I encourage you, Michael, to go back. If you tell this story, on the day of the wedding, what are you thinking? How nervous are you? What is going on in your mind? And are there also some doubts at that point? But when it finally works, at the end, you have that. Did you say call to action or the message at the end? Be the best you can be. Now, what I
have the courage to be the best you can be.
Yes. So I would ask you, I'm looking for the moment of transformation, the important part of the story. How do you realize this? Is this when you get the brother-in-law, for example, who says, wow, you're really good. You succeeded.
Actually, what comes to mind is almost immediately after the presentation, the singing, I met a young friend of hers in the washroom, and he was, I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was the gist of it was, that's pretty cool for her uncle to, you wrote this yourself? And to stand up and sing for her, it was quite touching. And it was a, yeah, there was admiration there, and so that was quite moving.
Nice. So you realize you got admiration from someone you maybe didn't know much, or at least
Didn't know him at all. No, I'd never seen
yeah.
him.
Yeah. So you put in effort, and it got rewarded by the admiration that you got from someone else. Great.
Yeah.
So that might be the moment of transformation. It's not while you're singing, but it comes later on.
Yeah, the realization of it perhaps, but the experience itself was like, there wasn't, while I was doing it, it was, like I said, I flipped a switch and it was just automatic. And that's what happens with rehearsal practice, right? Who knew? But yeah, so that's, it wasn't a chore doing it. And that was like, yeah, so the message there is also, from a speaking point of view, is do your rehearsal, and it works. But yeah.
Great. All right. Thanks so much, Michael, for sharing.
Thank you.
Yes. Now let's go to Ali.
Hi.
Yes. So what's your story? What can you share with us?
Yeah, the story that I have, it was about my last week Toastmaster Club that I delivered that speech. It was approach to IDA model, but I tried to compare these 6 steps that you suggest. It was wonderful. It helps to extend more our speech, more convincible, get it more convincible. I tried to match them together. The first step was live. That it was an example that I delivered. It was about I woke up a day thinking about what is the beauty. What was the beauty? After explaining about that, to make sense of curiosity at the next step, it was called to adventure. Make a scene of curiosity. What is the beauty? Is that about nature? Is it about myself, money, or something like that? And I try to absorb my audience attention. The next step is adventure and difficulties. Found myself on wrong way. It wasn't about nature. It wasn't about money, myself. Because when nature burns, there isn't anything about nature beauty. So it's something else. I can find it in next step. What is that? Great challenge. Yeah. It's something that makes me happy and it's eternal. That's why I make the scene of curiosity. What is the real beauty? And then I find it in an eternal beauty. It's morality. So I found that the real beauty is morality. It makes me feel happier. It makes me feel fresh, good communication with others. And I try to extend it with my audience. Then after passing the time, it's get better and better. Makes
Once you have realized that.
Yeah. And then transformation. Feel well. So I pick up morality as the most beautiful thing in the world, and then wisdom. I invite my audience, I invited the individuals to go through the morality as the best beautiful thing in the world, to make connection with others and see the results. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Thanks for sharing, Ali. That's very different as a storyline. I like it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you to go over the, if you look at this again, the everyday life. I would say that the call to adventure is when you ask that question, what is beauty? Unless you are thinking that every day of your life before, it sounds like that question comes to you somehow. So that would be the call to adventure. So when you tell the story, you could have something right before that, either you're always happy, everything goes well, or you're always feeling in a certain way. Just let us know in just a couple of sentences what your life is like before you ask yourself that question as the call to adventure.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would ask you to consider is, where does that wisdom or the answer come from? Is it from a book, another person? Is it from a memory? Do you know?
Yeah, is it from my experiences that I get from the result of choosing something as the beauty, like money, because money go away.
Right. So it sounds like you go through trial and error. You try different things.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to know. We don't need to answer right now. But if you delve deeper into this, why do you choose to test out morality? So just for everybody else, also, it works better if the big answer to all your problems in your story don't just come from yourself. It should come from somewhere else. Even if it comes to your mind through a higher power, that can happen. But it shouldn't come from, oh, I know, maybe this is the answer to all my problems or to my difficulty. Because you don't want to put yourself on the pedestal. And by the way, every time that I've asked this to someone who said, yeah, no, it just came to me, every time, there's always been another source for that wisdom. They just needed to recall what it was. Adi, thanks so much for playing with us. Let's continue with Mark. Mark, would you like to share?
Thank you so much. I just spent a few minutes, like you asked, and get a storyline for myself. I would like to share with the group.
Mm-hmm.
My everyday life should be something I struggled recently for a number of years with my son's math tutoring. When he was in elementary school, I'm engineering background, so I'm really good at math. However, my son was on another side of the spectrum. So he was a struggle in his math, and I tried to be his tutor. At elementary school level, of course, that was easy for me. However, he was the one that didn't want it. Each time we had a big fight because he doesn't want to do the Kumon quiz, to want to share his playtime with me instead of this math thing. So I gave up because we had so much conflict. And when he grew up, now he's in high school. And recently he discussed his math problem with his mom, which is an art girl in my way. He didn't approach to me because we had that history fight before, and I told him I won't be your tutor. I can spend money to find a tutor for you, but not myself. However, this time I see things different because he wanted to learn. And our saturation room, which is our dining table, my wife, me, and my son, we have a short discussion. I talk to my son. I say, son, I can be your tutor actually. First, I'm qualified. Secondly, because you are willing to learn.
Mm.
And now you are the driver. When you have this learning desire, I can be your tutor. Throughout those years, I haven't seen the spark in your life of this learning. And right now is the time. The evidence is from that point of view, from that time, and I did give him a lot of like math lessons, and I did improve his math. And from now on, both me and him, we are on the journey of this long high school 3 years journey of math learning and struggle. However, I can tell that he is serious. The takeaway from this I want to share is knowledge is acquired, not given. That's
Okay.
pretty much my story.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So it sounds like the wisdom that you're sharing is that last sentence, knowledge is acquired. Yeah. How do you come to that realization? Is there one particular
Because the struggle of the years, and
Yeah.
I realized, because I realized this long before, I know that a person to grow, even like today, everybody in here, because we want it. It's not somebody want us to do it. That's exactly the point. I gave him up because I gave up him previous years because I know he has no desire. And now things different. It's all of us can to be here. We want to be better at certain things like communication or learn something. That's the only reason we are here. That's why this wisdom was with me for a long time, but just now I apply that to my son. But that applied to myself. If I have no interest in this public speaking any further, I will quit all the meetings. That's exactly the same. I'm here, spend time on Saturday morning, and all of us, because we have a desire.
Right. Okay. So tell me this, Mark, do you apply that wisdom differently since you had that experience with your son?
No, it's one of my principles, probably.
So it's a
Deep in my
principle that you
mind.
had long before. I'm
Yes.
trying to pinpoint a moment of transformation.
Transformation.
Yeah.
For this story transformation, I would like to, because the reason for that is I'm thinking of this because of the next speech on the Toastmaster is about the, we have to have the mentor and the trainee kind of lesson to pass the next level, this certain thing. And this is the thing my coordinator asked me to do, the VP of education asked me to do about something about the trainee and the mentorship. But for my part of it, to be honest, I think the only reason you grow is yourself. It's not the mentor. The mentor be there is good. If you have desire, you will find it, no matter where that help is. That's why it's coming from.
Okay,
I don't
Mark,
know if it's cooperative or not.
Well, I've got a challenge for you.
Okay.
I've mentioned that when we write these stories for a Toastmasters audience, oftentimes, most of the time, you are your main character. You are the hero.
Yes.
My challenge is this: make your son the hero. So without completely changing how you tell the story, imagine that he is the main character going through this learning. So you can try to pinpoint the moment when your son lives that transformation, when he learns your lesson.
Got it. That's actually I implied and I thought about it, but I'm not clear as you just pointed out. That's exactly the point, right? So we said I said previously, I said both of us, right? But actually, it's not me because this hero should be my son in my story. And he actually it was the one transform. Myself, I didn't transform because I knew that. That's in my philosophy.
Yeah.
However, because he's changed, that transformation make a difference. That's a story we want to tell, and that is the message we want to share. Thank you for pointing out. That's very important. I didn't thought that very clear, but now I know. Actually, the transformation is not me. Actually, it's my son.
Yeah. That could be
Thank
great.
you so much for
All
that.
right.
But I think this is very practical because
Yes,
it's just
great.
take me like a few minutes. I can pretty much kind of like grab how I can make up story. Thank you
Yes,
so much. I
exactly.
appreciate that.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, this is what I like about having a model, and other people will give you different models. For me, this is what has worked for me, and I see the results from other people, like what you're sharing here. So that's why I love this model. It's easy, it works, and it's very fast to do something. Luzena.
Yes, Lucina, thank you.
Luzina, let's try to do it very quickly if we can, in just
All right.
in
So
a
for
minute
the
or two.
essay, I put living on the beautiful island of Abaco, Bahamas, where life was very tranquil and easygoing, and everything was routine and comfortable. And the call to adventure was Hurricane Dorian devastated the island of Abaco in September 1st, 2019. And the adventure and difficulties was my entire family had to be evacuated during the second half of the storm because the roof of our house was collapsing on us. Other people were dying, and some were stuck in their homes because of flooding. And the great challenge was everything was cut off. There was no water, electricity, no communication with the outside world. And our family on the outside had no idea if we were dead or alive.
Right.
The transformation was as a result of losing everything in Hurricane Dorian. I moved to Canada.
Oh.
Sharing of wisdom. I put tragedy, although awful as it is when it's happening, can be the catalyst for a new direction in life.
Wow. Thanks, Luzina. It's it's a wisdom in tragedy. That's a classic way of telling a story. Yeah. So I don't have time to give much feedback, but you know what? Get in touch with me, and I can give you more if you want. I'll invite you on one of my coaching calls. So what I encourage you to do is develop the great challenge when everything goes wrong, and how you manage to survive that great ordeal. All right, let's go see now if I've got some questions. And by the way, Melody, if you can stop sharing the computer sound, I'll be able to share again my screen. Are there any questions from the audience? Quick questions before we end in a couple of minutes. We may have time for one question.
I
The
think
red light gives me 5 minutes.
Luis had his hand up. I know we're out of time, but Luis, if you're quick.
Sorry, is the red 60 minutes or 55?
Red is done. It's 60 minutes, yeah.
55. So you are at 56.8 now.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, you know what? If you've got a question, leave it in the chat, if that's fine, and I'll give you a way for you to reach me after your TLI is done. So I'll give you a link. Can I do that? Excuse me, I need to go find my notepad here. Because if you found this useful or not, I want to know. I want to know about it. So here's a quick evaluation form. I especially want to know if it's not useful, because then I can correct things. If you can go to that link, it's a simple form just to give me some feedback, give me some however stars you want. And when you fill it in, there will be a link to know more about my coaching. You know what? I've got weekly calls, and by the way, Luzina, please do get in touch with me. I'll invite you for a quick coaching session on one of these calls. And anybody who's interested in getting deeper into crafting a story or developing your speech and making it the best that you can, as Carol said earlier, I'm helping people get professional coaching at a very affordable price. And you should hear what results we're getting. It's awesome. I was with one person who was going to present at his club contest, and he's already got a speech that is of district quality. So he's going to make it very, very far. So I would like to thank Shahrukh for his confidence in me, and thank Carol for your invitation as well. I'm very happy that I was able to come back to the West Coast once again. And and even though I am completely on the East, we are able to share this. So it's a wonderful way for me to be able to be with you. So just remember, if you want to create your best speech ever, you just need to create your best story ever. And that is done when you are the hero of your journey. Back to you, Carol.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Alexandre. I had the pleasure of hearing his no bake cake story. It was wonderful. And I want to thank you for your presentation today, how to captivate your audience in 6 easy steps. Thank you so much. And you're welcome to stay with us some more. People may have some questions. For the time being, we'll move on to the next area on our agenda, which happens to be me. And I will be presenting a refresher on the cloud contest console